Welcome to this week's program as we look at some of the stories we did in 2016 to give you a wee taste of what we're going to be bringing you in the following year. Interesting thing, we've been through spring, but how do those people get the daffodils at the right time? John, you and Hadstock, in fact, have been involved with daffodils and tulips for a long, long time now.
Well, I've been here my whole life. My grandfather originally started growing tulips back in the 30s. And my father in the 50s introduced daffodils, and I'm still going. Haven't gone anywhere, so I'm still learning.
You're going to start planting, is that pretty early?
Yes, we've had these ones, which you can see here, have been in the cooler since January, so they've had their winter already. And this week they'll be going in the ground, and hopefully early June we'll have some daffodils for everybody in the Christchurch market.
Somebody who wants to grow daffodils, for example, there's several ways that you can grow them.
Yes, well, either in pots or if you want to naturalise under trees and garden, various different ways. Probably now's the time to start planting.
Now, if somebody wants to buy some, where are your bulbs available?
Yeah, these are us. We mainly sell through the internet. We've got a website. We put them on Trade Me and through our retail shop in Hills Road, Miss Fever Florist. We sell a lot of bulbs through.
It's a pretty big business.
There's 10,000 bulbs in every one of these bins. And we dig up to, we have over 100 bins dug each year.
And you've still got some in the ground, I assume.
I've probably got 30 or 40 acres I haven't dug yet, yes. So, yes, we've got a lot of bulbs.
And there's a chiller full as well?
The chiller full, yes, we've got about 400,000 in the chiller for early flowers.
So naturalising, you talked about putting them under trees. You don't have to dig it all up?
If you choose strong varieties, Rob, you leave them in for 5-10 years, well, indefinitely they're fine. They'll keep growing. It doesn't hurt every so often to just put a spade in and break them up and replant them. The doubles and the weaker varieties, specialised varieties, I wouldn't naturalise, but good old red cups and trumpets, they'll stay for years.
John, you've got a lot of different varieties. How do you keep them all separate?
That work has to go on when they're in flower, and everything's carefully recorded and marked and carefully labelled when we dig it. We do have the odd accident, that's why we have mixtures.
As far as these are concerned, these will be going into the ground. How do you work the ground up, or what do you do?
We just plough the ground, then rotary hoe it, and then they've got a planter just makes a row and they go in the ground. It's all quite simple.
Now there's a fly, isn't there, that seems to kill daffodils?
Narcissi fly. That's something we hot water treat all our bulbs to prevent that. So that's why we try and dig on a 3 or 4 year cycle to make sure everything's treated reasonably regularly. Everything that's dug, we do hot water treat. So if you buy bulbs from us, you know you're getting a good clean bulb. It's a problem that's always going to be there. There's no spray for it. Hot water treating's the only solution. We've just got it's a proper Dutch bulb digger. It's like a potato digger. We dig them, dirt and all in the rows, and then wash the dirt off the bulbs to get a good clean bulb.
During the spring you sell the flowers?
January we start selling bulbs, and in the spring we sell the flowers through our shop and through all the supermarkets and through the Christchurch market in Auckland and Wellington. And we do a lot for the Cancer Society, which is the end of August, which is usually touch and go with the weather, but hopefully.
You must be very susceptible to weather.
Yes, this year's been good. We've had early rain, so everything started growing, and we need it reasonably cool for a while, and plenty of rain for the next 2 or 3 months.
And the ideal spring for a bulb grower or a daffodil flower grower?
No nor'west days. Rain at night's good, not during the day, so we can get them picked. And no snow. And no hailstorm, obviously, for the flowers.
Once again, you are very vulnerable.
Yes, well, a good hailstorm can wipe out a whole crop. The only thing we have got now is enough varieties that if we get a storm, you only lose one variety, and hopefully the other ones are further behind or front, so we don't lose everything.
Now I understand that you are the 3rd generation, but there's a 4th generation coming on.
When you ring and order bulbs, Courtney's the one that takes all the bulb orders. So she's the one that knows more about it than I do when it comes to the retail side of the bulbs.
And you're enjoying it, Courtney?
Yes, I love it.
So what improvements do you think you'll make that the old man's not doing?
Get rid of me, I'd imagine.
No, he's doing pretty well. Just making it a bit more organised and yeah.
What would happen if all of a sudden all the plants on Earth were to disappear because of disease or whatever? We find out what is in reserve if that were to happen. Brian, who or what is the Seed Vault?
The Svalbard Global Seed Vault is the backup to the global system of conservation of crop diversity. It is where collections go to make sure that their collections are safe in the future. So they make a safety backup, like a safety deposit box in a bank.
So, Brian, who's funding it?
The Seed Vault was built and funded by the Norwegian government in 2008. The annual operating costs of the Seed Vault are provided by the Crop Trust and the Norwegian government. The work of maintaining the collection is managed by the Nordic Gene Bank, Nordgen.
Did they come up with the idea?
A long time ago, the Nordic Gene Bank actually stored their crop collection in an abandoned cave mine up in Svalbard. The idea of conserving and backing up diversity has been around for 100 or so years, even more. And this concept of the Seed Vault was thought about by many people, but the reason why the Seed Vault in Longyearbyen now exists is because of a man named Kerry Fowler. He was the director of the Crop Trust, and he recognized that we needed this backup. And so he approached the Norwegian government to create this Seed Vault in Norway, and that's how it all started.
Who's the Crop Trust?
The Crop Trust is an international organization working to conserve crop diversity worldwide. We are working to create and fund a global system for the conservation of crop diversity in crop collections worldwide.
Now, an interesting thing, but why was Norway chosen?
Svalbard is an interesting choice for the location of the vaults, and it has many reasons as to why it's there. One being that there is the Svalbard Treaty, which allows for anybody to basically be in the area, meaning that you can have seeds from North Korea and South Korea on the same shelf. Other reasons include the fact that it's cold. It's the farthest north you can fly in a commercial airline. And in the permafrost, in the mountain, you have a consistent temperature of -7 degrees Celsius. The optimal storage conditions for seeds for long-term conservation is -18 degrees Celsius. So you already have a degree of cold that you don't have to bring down through artificial cold, which makes it a good place to do that in comparison to a +40 degree weather in the Philippines.
Having picked the ideal spot, how do you actually choose the seeds that you're going to store?
Around the world, there are about 1,750 collections of crop diversity. Not all of them contain unique varieties. These collections contain about 7 million varieties, but only 2 to 2.5 of these are unique. So the Seed Vault is meant to store the unique diversity of crops. So in order to deposit to the Seed Vaults, collections are required to deposit unique varieties. And these crops are only for food security.
So it's only agricultural crops?
There is one box in the Seed Vault that contains flora and fauna, and that is from the local Svalbard area. The rest of the collection in the Seed Vaults is for agricultural crops.
Why one box?
The one box of flora and fauna from Svalbard was chosen as a consideration for the fact that the Seed Vault is located on this far northern archipelago in Longyearbyen. And it was a collection that the university put together, and it was kind of a symbolic representation of diversity and life in Svalbard.
How up to date are you as far as the vault is concerned?
The Seed Vault gets deposits from collections 3 times a year, and currently contains more than 830,000 different samples. Obviously, we would like to get it to the full 2 to 2.5 unique varieties in the world, but that's a long process.
Now, the varieties, you've got some basic ones like rice, I guess, but what about, is there anything sort of GM?
So I'll start with the rice question. In the world, there are about 200,000 varieties of rice. These are all unique varieties, and the majority of them are stored inside the Seed Vaults. The Seed Vault contains this natural diversity from across the world, about 830,000, 40,000 varieties. Norwegian law prohibits GM crops and food from entering their borders. So likewise, the seed vault does not allow GM crops.
Any withdrawals been made from the bank so far?
In 2015, we saw the first seed retrieval from the seed vault. This was a collection called the International Center for Agricultural Research in the Dry Areas, and they held their collection in Aleppo, Syria. Because of the civil strife, the collection was not able to maintain the work required of it. Collections in the world are not only meant to hold as a backup, but they're actually meant to work with scientists and breeders. They're meant to send and share the material so that we can improve agriculture for the future. They were unable in the conditions in Aleppo, Syria now, or in the past 5 years, to really do their job as effectively as possible. Now, they were doing a great job. They were still sending out shipments of seeds, with war going on. But it wasn't optimal. And so ICARDA decided that it was time for them to reestablish their collection in a different country that they can more safely resume their activities. So in September of 2015, they received about 38,000 varieties from the seed vault that they had deposited, because only those who deposit can retrieve their seeds, and brought them to Morocco and Lebanon to restart their collection.
Is it a concern that there has been a withdrawal?
Of course, we don't want that to happen. We don't want seeds to be withdrawn because it means something's bad happened in the world. But it proves the point that the seed vaults exist for a reason, and we need it. And it proves the point that this work is extremely important. And before the seed vaults, this work didn't get the credit it deserved. People are working on a daily basis to make sure that the food on your plate remains into the future. And the seed vault provides that safety net.
What role do you see for the future?
So the collections around the world are doing the actual work on a day-to-day basis. They're working with scientists and breeders to develop new crops. But as shown in Syria, things can happen. There are natural disasters, there's war, anything could happen to these collections. And the seed vault is integral in making sure that we don't lose these options for the future. Each single seed might provide a trait that can be used to adapt to a new condition, whether it's a pest and disease, drought, climate change, anything. And the seed vault provides this backup for our food security system.
So what's the Crop Trust involvement?
The Crop Trust is working to create this global system and fund it. We were built in 2004 to establish an endowment fund that would provide the necessary funding that these collections around the world need on a yearly basis. Because something as simple as a power outage or not paying the electricity bill can result in the loss of diversity and an extinction event. So our job is to make sure that these collections are secure. So we are working to raise money to do this. We're very happy that just this year, New Zealand made an announcement, a pledge of 2 million New Zealand dollars to the endowment. And we're working with countries around the world to raise that endowment fund.
Has New Zealand actually made a contribution as yet?
We will have a deposit to the Svalbard Global Seed Vaults on Monday, the 23rd of May. It will become the first deposit by New Zealand. The Margot Ford Germplasm Center will deposit around 700 varieties of crops. Clover and ryegrass will be deposited by New Zealand. So we're very excited to welcome the first deposit by New Zealand.
So apart from Norway and New Zealand, what other countries are involved, if any?
As of right now, we have 66 different institutions that have deposited into the seed vaults. We'd obviously like that number to grow, but that's at times difficult. It requires funding, political interference can occur, but the seeds in the seed vault have originated from every single country in the world. So we're getting there.
What else is the Crop Trust involved in?
While the Crop Trust is building this global system and working to manage and fund many of these collections around the world, we're also working to fill the gaps in the global system. There are crops growing in the wild in natural conditions without human influence that are the wild cousins of what is grown in our fields today. These crop wild relatives contain hardy traits that we can use to adapt our agriculture to the conditions we face in the future. So through a 10-year commitment from the Norwegian government, we are collecting, conserving, and using these crop wild relatives to improve our agriculture. And we're very excited about this. We have collecting agreements with nearly 20 countries, and we'll be going out over the next 2 years and collecting this diversity, storing them in collections, eventually backing them up in the seed vaults, but also providing them to breeders so that they can use them to improve agriculture, to improve the crops that we have in our fields today against the rising temperatures, pests and diseases, which these crops in the wild naturally are protecting against.
What about the United Nations? Do they have a role as far as the whole diversity is concerned?
The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals actually have a target in there in Goal 2 of ending hunger. 2.5 says by 2020, we should conserve the diversity and wild diversity of crops in the gene banks in the world, in international, national, and regional collections. So this is a very good indication that the governments of the world recognize the importance of crop diversity and recognize the importance of using this diversity to adapt our agriculture and be able to feed our future despite climate change and despite the challenges of a rising population.
We dearly hope, of course, that we never ever have to take a withdrawal from the seed vault. We're going to be back with more for you on The Land straight after the break.
Not sure how to brighten up your backyard? Try Grow Sure Easy Flowers, all in one mix. Seed, feed, mulch. It's bloomin' easy. Be sure with Grow Sure from KiwiCare.
Everybody has a story to tell. What's yours? Maybe your family has been farming the land for 5 generations. Perhaps you have invented the next best thing in agriculture, or maybe something else. Whatever your story, if you're out on the land, we want to hear from you. Get in touch by emailing us at info@ontheland.co.nz.
You know that saying, content is king? Well, in today's mixed media world, it's true. You need video, audio, photos and more for social media, for marketing, for communications, sales and for advertising. And you need this at a price that works with your budgets. Well, that's what we do. At Tandem, we partner with you to create the content that you can use to shout to the world or video link to a few. Connect with us and we'll help you connect to the world.
We're living on a planet facing almost insurmountable challenges. Challenges we have to face sooner rather than later. The world needs our energy. She needs our ideas, our passion. It's up to us to change things, make a positive change to the planet, to feed the world, to protect the future, to live well, to be the generation that will make a change. Join us.
Not sure why your camellias aren't cooperating? Try Grow Sure Planting Magic, packed full of nutrients in just one handful. Be sure with Grow Sure from KiwiCare.
Guy, the sheep industry, is it in good heart?
Well, it's had better times. We're down to 29 million sheep in the country now. We've sort of dropped below the magic 30 million, which is a bit of a concern. Lots of good things happening, farm IQ and developments along the way. They are finding new innovative ways to increase production. And probably the biggest thing that stopped the decrease in the sheep industry is the downturn of the dairy industry. So the options of moving out of sheep to other more attractive options have become limited in the short term. But there's still some fundamental problems with what farmers are receiving for their product. And so, one of the things we're looking at is alternatives to a traditional lamb production to try and create more profit for sheep farmers.
So are you suggesting that we go away from meat and wool and into sheep dairying?
Well, no, I'm not saying move away from meat and wool, but I'm saying there's another string to your bow and get into dairying. Yeah, and the sheep dairy industry is quite keen on setting up, well, the group I'm involved with, setting up protocols where we do rear the lambs, we don't euthanise lambs, and so there's a win-win for the meat industry as well as the sheep dairy industry. And you can produce wool on the side as well.
The guy most people would say sheep dairying, yeah?
I actually heard Joni Williams on Origin Earth on one of the farming programs recently talking about the hardest people to convince are sheep farmers. And I can recall in my previous life as a farmer going out docking and forgetting our milk. This often happens, and it never occurred to us to milk the sheep to provide our milk. And so I do understand where that reticence comes from, and it seems to be pretty ingrained in our British background, even though the Brits did have a background in sheep dairy going way back, but it's more of a European concept as opposed to a British concept. And so, yeah, with our strong British background, we do have reservations around milking of sheep. But having said that, it's gaining real traction. New Zealand's in the vicinity of having 30,000 milking sheep in the country now. It's still not up to goat numbers yet, but it's catching up. And goat numbers aren't decreasing, they're over 50,000. So there looks to be the start of a viable industry occurring in New Zealand.
Plant. Where do you get plant from?
Well, we have a small dairy farm set up at home, at our place, and we actually got goat plant from the goat industry. And I think that's, if people were setting up for new plant, going to the Waikato and talking to the people who manufacture the plant for goat farmers would be very comparable to sheep farming. Might be some subtle changes. The sheep arguably is a slightly bigger animal, the East Frisian is anyway. There may be a bit of lengthening in the plant, but by and large what works for goats works for sheep.
Now you mentioned East Frisian, are they the breed of choice?
Yeah, that's really the only option. Jock Allison, when he brought the East Frisian and the Awasi breed into New Zealand, the Awasi being a Middle Eastern breed, fat tail breed, that's also a very good milk producer. And the Israelis actually have a breed called the Asaf, which is a combination of the East Frisian and the Awasi, and it suits their conditions very well. But and they both have different strengths and weaknesses. The East Frisian is more of a dual-purpose animal, probably got better feet than the Awasi, which is relevant for New Zealand conditions, but it's also reasonably prone to lung infections, viral pneumonia particularly. I think that as the breed has developed in New Zealand, it's improved in that regard, but it's still an issue. Where the Awasi, possibly slightly less production, certainly less lambs, a hairy wool, and it's not as big as the East Frisian, but a combination of the two might be a useful mix in the future where they can complement each other. But there's very few Awasi available in New Zealand. There is a flock in the North Island, in the Hawke's Bay, but they're pretty much tied up by their owners for the live shipment trade into Australia, or genetics for that, from what I understand.
So here at Lincoln you've got your heart and soul in it and you're researching it.
Yeah, well, my passion is the sheep dairy industry. We've put a lot of our own money into it at home. We don't have a unit here on Lincoln as yet. Be nice to see one for small ruminants, sheep and goats. I think there's a place for it. And so we do a lot of our research around modelling, be it through different computer-based modelling, and we can replicate a farm pretty well with that. And so that's what we use to do our research around sheep dairy. Having said that, our students do get exposed to it. We have a southern tour. We take our third year students around the southern part of the South Island through Southland, and we almost invariably call into Blue River, or Antares Ag is their sheep dairy side of it, the farming side of it's called, and spend a morning on the sheep dairy farms there. And we're using our block at home, which is 20 minutes away, to take selected students out and introduce them to the sheep dairy concept out there as well. So while we don't have a lot of presence of sheep dairy here at Lincoln itself, we do expose the students to them, and I am managing to brainwash a few along the way to the ideals of getting into sheep dairy. And it's surprising how receptive the students are. They see the potential as a leg into an agricultural industry without having to fork out a lot, and it's a really good way to add another string to the farming bow, so mum and dad and the children can come home and have different parts of the farm by having these two different industries working together.
One of the biggest expenses that anybody on the land has got is obviously electricity. So how would you feel if somebody came up to you and said you could use the energy on your farm and get right off the grid? Here's how you can do it. Brian, who or what is GeoSun?
GeoSun is a company founded by a group of 4 of us when we stumbled across the idea of multiple source energy recovery on farms. So after a period of research, we established the company and hit the market in the later part of last year.
So there's 3 different forms of energy?
Yes, we start with the principle that there is enough energy on any particular farm in this country on any particular day to satisfy the energy requirements of that property. Unfortunately, it's not always in the form that you would like. So by using 3 different forms of energy recovery, we're able to provide it in a format that the farmer can use. The farmer just pushes the button or turns the handle or opens the valve. He doesn't have to worry about where the energy is coming from. What our system does is capture the energy and put it in a format that he needs to use.
So what are the 3?
Well, we all start with the sun. The sun is the vital ingredient in a property like this to grow the grass, and it's the greatest energy source we have on the planet. So solar energy is obviously an important one. And from that you can see what I mean by each form having its advantages or disadvantages. Obviously solar energy is not so good during the night and on cloudy days like this. From there we go to geothermal energy exchange, and again we think of the sun as a source of that. A lot of the sun's energy doesn't go into grass, it doesn't do anything else, it just heats the surface of the planet. And that energy is stored there for us by the planet. So by finding a way to exchange that energy to bring it to the surface, then that's another form we can use for heating or cooling. And the third type, again started with the sun, because the sun was necessary to grow the grass. The cow ate that grass, turned some of it into milk and some of it into waste. And that waste still has energy in it. And from that, through the anaerobic digester process, we can turn that waste into biogas. Now biogas is an interesting material, and you can use it for generating electricity or heat, but it's very good to store, very easy to store. So there's another reason why you would have 3 types. They all have their advantages, and when you put them together, you get a self-sufficient energy system on a farm.
So you're tying all 3 into one?
Yeah, that's really the key to it, Rob. All the technologies I've just mentioned are not new. They have been around the world in various forms for many, many years, and in the case of biodigesters for hundreds and hundreds of years. What is new is the ability to bring them all into one network, so the farmer doesn't have to think when he turns on the irrigation pump where that particular electricity is coming from. All he needs to know is that it's working. That idea of a common network that the energy can be put into is the real crux of what we've achieved.
Now looking at this farm, you've got several irrigators, you've got probably several homes, and you've also got a dairy shed. Are you suggesting that you can come off the grid?
That would be the ultimate goal, and certainly on a property like this, there's 720 odd cows being milked here. So we could very definitely go off grid here by a combination of all three of the energy types I spoke of.
Now, I want to know more about this hole in the ground business, because to most people that's real smoke and mirrors stuff.
Yes, a lot of people in New Zealand hear the word geothermal and they think of Taupo and Rotorua and those sort of places, and they're right, that is geothermal energy. However, there are other forms of geothermal energy, what we refer to as low temperature geothermal, and that is simply the energy which is stored in the surface of the earth itself. When you go down a few metres, you'll find that things start to heat up. In fact, they stay at a temperature far higher than the ambient temperature. By the time you're down 15 metres, that temperature is stable, doesn't move much between summer and winter, night or day, wet season, dry season. So if you can harness that energy and bring that to the surface, where you can then connect it to, say, a refrigeration plant to use to cool the milk on a farm, or to the hot water cylinders used for washing the dairy down at the end of milking, then that energy, of course, the sun gave it to you, you've got it for free. There are no moving parts required to get it to the surface. All we're doing is using the law of fluid, one of the laws of fluid dynamics, which is the law of equilibrium, where if you put two substances together, their heat or their temperature will match over time. So if you've got a nice, warm, constant temperature under your feet, and we put some cold water down there, that water will come to the surface, having absorbed the energy from the earth. Likewise, we take some hot water from the surface, because it's just gone through and taken that heat from the milk, and put it down the hole, then it discharges that heat into the earth. And so by that simple process, we can use it to heat the hot water and chill the milk.
Brian, it's been trialled and proved in the Northern Hemisphere?
Yeah, it's a pretty common practice. Low temperature geothermal in Europe, Canada and the United States is an everyday way of heating. If you look at Germany, for instance, they've got 300,000 geothermal closed loop systems operating throughout the country, and an awful number of those for domestic heating. Here in Christchurch, 8 of the new buildings going up for the rebuild have geothermal heating and cooling. Christchurch International Airport has used geothermal energy for heating and cooling for the last decade. So it's not new technology, as I said before. It's just a new way of applying it, and this idea of bringing it all onto one network.
So I guess if you do use all three, you can totally cut your electricity bills. They'll be gone.
Yes, it's about lowering that cost of production. If you're not paying the power bill, you're using what you've already got, which you got for free, your cost of production goes down.
Wouldn't that be absolutely brilliant? You can even, as he said, you can run your dairy shed as well as your irrigation plants. But speaking of wonderful things that can unfold, let's go back out to the Lincoln University, where their scientists are right on the ball. Glenn, Lincoln University is heavily into the wine industry.
Yes, Lincoln's been actually one of the places where the wine industry started back in the 70s, in Canterbury anyway. It was David Jackson and the people around him who thought that maybe Canterbury could grow quality wines, but nobody had actually tried before that point. So back in the mid-70s, David Jackson planted the first vines and got fruit on them and made them into wine just to test and see whether they'd make a decent wine or not. So it's one of the only areas in the world, if not the only area in the world, where the research actually started first and the industry in Canterbury started after that research. It was because of that research it actually started. Usually the industry starts someplace and then the research follows. So it's a little unusual in that way. So we've been going for a long time.
So you're producing people who can work in the vineyard as well as get into the winemaking proper?
Yeah, we produce people who can act in all aspects of the vineyard and in the wine industry. It's really winemakers and viticulturists who do the real work in making the wine, but also all the people around that, the suppliers, the technicians, everything. Our students have gone in all sorts of directions, including into wine writing and being wine critics. So we've actually had Masters of Wine who've come and done the program, which is pretty phenomenal when you think about it, because Master of Wine is one of the most preeminent wine qualifications in the world. But they come here because they want to learn about how stuff is made, not just about the final product.
You're pretty hands-on.
Yeah, we try to make this program as hands-on as we can. We have quite a limitation in terms of the amount of time versus the amount of information that people need to really get. So we try to make sure that there are linkages between our lectures, and we do that in our laboratory programs. For example, in this vineyard, we assign a pair of students to a row, and it's their job basically to look after those grapes, get them ready for harvest, make a wine-making plan, and then take it all the way through into a bottle. And at the end of the academic year, we have a bit of a tasting, and people will taste the wines blind, so they don't know who made them, and they'll critique them, and they'll say what's good and bad about them, and then eventually somebody will own up to the wine and say, this is my wine, and these are the issues we had making this wine. This is how we, corrected the mistakes we made, and this is what we, wished we'd made versus what we actually made. And it's really really instructive.
And of course, this industry is very subject to climate.
Yeah, season is really important in winemaking. It's one of those things that, as a farmer, any farmer, you have to deal with what's given to you. And so we have no control over the weather. So really what our program is about is trying to say to students, okay, you need to know how the grapevine responds to the environment in order to best manage it. And so that's really what we're trying to do. And that's dealing with things like changes in the weather, hot seasons, cold seasons, wet seasons, early frosts, late frosts. The best way to deal with these things is by knowing what the vine does, and then how to deal with the fruit once it comes into the winery.
Now, you're also doing research. What are you up to there?
Yeah, my research program is really centered around changes we make in the vineyard and then how that affects the final product. So my research trials start in the vineyard and they actually finish in the bottle. And we've done a lot of studies where we've changed the grape environment through the use of reflective mulches to try to change the light environment coming back up to the grapes from the ground. We've done lots of leaf removal type treatments and shoot trimming type treatments. Just over behind us, the vines that have the net on them are part of a rootstock trial that's been running for 10 years. So we're doing lots of different things, and wherever possible, we always take that to the wine and then have some tasting the wine or some sorts of measurements on the wine to see what the real effects are.
And now, of course, wine varies within a type, so it must be a very interesting sort of an industry to be in.
Wine is a great product because quality is in the eye of the beholder. So wine is a good wine. It really depends on who's tasting it, what their experiences are, and what their expectations are. And there's so much variety in different types of grapes, and then even within a type of grape, there's different wine styles that can be made from it. So it's really a very broad palette, and that's why I think winemaking is still, it's part science, but it's really a lot of art. It's up to the grape grower and the winemaker to make the grape and then make the wine that they think is best for those grapes, and then hopefully to find a consumer that wants to buy it and enjoy it again and again.
Because as an industry, there'll be lots of jobs for people finishing your course.
Yeah, the job market is still pretty dynamic. There's an increased need for people who really understand how grapevines grow and react to the environment, and then also how to deal with grapes when they come into the winery to make the desired wines that people want. So our program is aimed at trying to give people the skills and the knowledge base to be able to do that. And our students have ended up all over around the world, working in hot climates, cool climates, and challenging climates, and it's very gratifying to see how they've been doing around the world as they grow and mature into their own unique winemaking style.
And of course, they put their personalities into their wines.
That's why winemaking is really much of an art, because the standard practices, students will graduate with all of their academic learning and the practical stuff that they learn here, and then the real learning process begins when they go out into industry and they start working in vintages. Many times students will hemisphere hop, so in order to get more experience in a tighter time frame, they'll do a vintage in New Zealand, and then they'll go up to the northern hemisphere and do a vintage there, and they'll hop around back and forth for a number of years to get the experience in different environments, different grape varieties, different styles of winemaking. And in that process, they develop their own thinking about how wine should be made, and therefore they have their own signature in their wine, which is really a great thing. And we talk about terroir and the influence of the environment on the grapes and the wine, but the winemaker is part of that too, a very important part.
And as I said, Lincoln University is a wealth of knowledge. Coming up in just a moment or two, we have a look at one way that you can make sure that your safety on the farm is legal.
Not sure how to brighten up your backyard? Try Grow Sure Easy Flowers, all in one mix. Seed, feed, mulch. It's bloomin' easy. Be sure with Grow Sure from KiwiCare.
Everybody has a story to tell. What's yours? Maybe your family has been farming the land for 5 generations. Perhaps you have invented the next best thing in agriculture, or maybe something else. Whatever your story, if you're out on the land, we want to hear from you. Get in touch by emailing us at info@ontheland.co.nz.
You know that saying, content is king? Well, in today's mixed media world, it's true. You need video, audio, photos and more for social media, for marketing, for communications, sales and for advertising. And you need this at a price that works with your budgets. Well, that's what we do. At Tandem, we partner with you to create the content that you can use to shout to the world or video link to a few. Connect with us and we'll help you connect to the world.
We're living on a planet facing almost insurmountable challenges. Challenges we have to face sooner rather than later. The world needs our energy. She needs our ideas, our passion. It's up to us to change things, make a positive change to the planet, to feed the world, to protect the future, to live well, to be the generation that will make a change. Join us.
Not sure why your camellias aren't cooperating? Try Grow Sure Planting Magic, packed full of nutrients in just one handful. Be sure with Grow Sure from KiwiCare.
Farm safety has now changed, there's new rules and regulations, but you guys have come up with an electronic solution.
Yeah, so we wanted to create a system that was simple for farmers to use. So we were really struggling to manage health and safety in a corporate dairy business that we used to work for. And so we just wanted to create a tool that was simple for people to use and was effective and engaged the team in health and safety as well.
And each farm has got its own system?
Yeah, so each farm has its own system, and it has a farm map where farmers can just drop pins onto the map, all the pins are risks, and then each risk has some information associated with it in terms of what it is and some of the safety information that people need to know and to be aware of, so that people are aware of the risk when they come to the farm.
So on their computer they put a virtual boundary around their property?
It's got a geo-fence, which is a virtual fence around the property, so when someone arrives on the farm and they have the app on their phone, the app or the system knows that they're there, and so it'll prompt them and say, hey, you've arrived at the farm, and we'd like you to review the risks, and so that you're aware of them, and then you can acknowledge them and sign in.
So this is great, because this system is in lieu of a whole lot of paper and a shed somewhere, whether it be the dairy or the wool shed or whatever.
Yeah, so we're trying to get away from paper. Paper's painful on a farm. It's not really fit for purpose because farming environments are often wet and dirty, and they cover a large area, and so paper just isn't fit for purpose in farms. So we've made something that's electronic, it's mobile, it's with you all the time, and so you can access the information wherever you are. If you're in the back paddock, you can hop on your mobile and you can see what the risks that are around you that are relevant to you at the time. So,
and going back to paper, of course, those books or whatever that we're supposed to sign in on, they could be anywhere, and nobody knows if the farmer's there or not, and it's a bit confusing.
Could be anywhere, yeah. You don't know where it's going to be. So often it'll be in the dairy shed if it's a dairy, or it might be in the wool shed. But it's often you don't know where it's going to be, so it's easier if it's just on your phone.
So as a television presenter doing a farming program, I go onto obviously a lot of farms, so I can use this system myself to sign in.
Yeah, so you'd download the app and you'd be a user that visited farms for business reasons, probably, and so you'd just download the app, and any farm that you went to that used on-site, when you arrived, it would just alert you that you'd arrived at the farm, and you'd go through the process of looking at the risks, and it would only show you the risks that you hadn't seen before, so it's not going to drag you through things that you're already aware of. So we try to make the risks that you see the most relevant, and then you'll review those, check them out, acknowledge that you've read them and sign in, and then once you've arrived, the farm manager the farm team will get an alert that you've arrived, and they have your contact details on their phone and that sort of stuff.
So if you're a truck driver, for example, who's going to be coming onto a farm to spread fertiliser, the farmer A knows where you are and that you're there, but you also are in instant contact with the farmer.
Yeah, so it's great for truck drivers because they don't need to get out of their truck. They can just roll on in, it'll alert them, they sign in, and then they can actually check out the risks that are in the paddock where they are, rather than having to look at a map that has a whole lot of irrelevant information on it.
And of course, security-wise, as a farmer, you know in fact who is on your farm.
Yeah, so it's got a cool feature that I think farmers quite like. That's the feedback we've had, which is the Who's on My Farm feature. So anyone that's on your farm at any time that has the on-site app, you can go onto the Who is on My Farm feature and it'll tell you exactly who's on your farm and how long they've been there. And you can also go back and look at a history of who's been on your farm. So it's good for tracking hours and things like that.
What if there's no cell phone coverage?
So we've thought hard about that, and so we've built a lot of offline capability into the system. If you go to a farm that doesn't have good cellular reception, then it'll still know you're there because the GPS usually works. So not often that the GPS won't have signal. So so the system will still know you're there. It'll prompt you to sign in, but what you do need to have done is to pre-download the risks. So you can do that when if you know you're going to a farm that doesn't have good cellular reception, you pre-download the risks, and then when you arrive, it's like having an online experience.
What about battery usage?
So yeah, because on-site has location detection technology, it's a question a lot of people ask us, is it going to drain their battery? So we spend a lot of time and effort with the team at Jade to figure out a cool way to make sure it doesn't use a lot of battery. So it only uses your location for a small period of time, a short period of time when you're close to the farm and about to go into the boundary, and then after that, the location detection slows down and stops. So our experience, what we've found is it doesn't use too much battery. It's probably 5th or 6th on the list of battery users on your phone.
What are the costs?
So the system's going to be free for April, and then from then it's $10 a user a month.
Do you buy an annual contract, or what's the system?
No, so you buy a monthly contract and you can cancel it any time. So you just pay for the people on your team or yourself, and then if you aren't finding value with the system, then you just cancel.
And if there's an incident, I guess you can report that on your cell phone or on your computer.
Yeah, so the app on the mobile or on the mobile and on the web, you can record or report a risk or an incident. So you can also report a new risk. So if you report an incident, you put in the details, all the details that you need to put in there, and the farm administrators get an alert that a new incident's been logged, and then you can go then the administrators will go online later onto the website, and they can manage that as they need to.
The authorities must love you guys.
Yeah, so what we're trying to do is make it easy for farmers. None of the information's available to the authorities. They have to go and actually sit down with the farmer to go through the information. So it's not we're not sharing information with anyone. It's just so it's up to the farmer holds the key to the information. But we think it'll make it easier for farmers to work with the authorities to have a living, breathing health and safety plan.
That's what I was meaning. Is because you're making it simple.
Well, yeah, hopefully it makes it easier for everyone.
What's the feedback been like?
So we've been testing this system with farmers and our friends and family and other farmers for a few months now, and we've had lots of really good feedback. But I think the feedback that farmers give us is the most important thing. So based on that feedback, we want to continue to invest in the product and make it better over time. So for us, this is the first step. And as we get new ideas from users, we'll continue to try and build it and make it better.
Constant R&D, I guess, for you guys.
We want to have a continual R&D process that's just going all the time. So we want to roll new features out, which is based on user feedback. So we want to hear from people, how it's going, how we can improve it, and what else they need.
Who's involved?
So the people, there's three of us founded on-site. So there's myself, Juliet McLean, and Michael Falconer.
And what about the future? Where are you taking this?
Yeah, so this is the first step for us. We want to continue to develop new cool solutions for farmers that are mobile and take the pain away of problems that they're having on the farm, and solutions for problems that they need solving.
And it's a small team, but I guess that team will grow.
Yeah, so there's just the three of us right now, but this is just the first step, and we'll continue to grow as we need, and hopefully we can grow our team and get lots of other cool people involved.
Certainly makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Let's have a look now at one of the Northland dairy farmers who's actually making all sorts of inroads up in that neck of the woods. Murray, Northland out at the Whangarei Heads, it's a challenging bit of land.
Yes, it can be at times of the year, Rob. It's coastal, can be dry, and also can have a serious amount of rain as well. So yeah, we are challenged, and we've got pastures that you don't see all around the countryside, which are more difficult to manage, and that's Kaikuyu pastures.
So tell me about the property.
So the property is 550 hectares, of which 235 is dairy platform, and the rest is dairy support, and also we run a dairy beef operation, which we support from taking the calves from the dairy cows to Angus Jersey Cross and carrying them through to finishing.
So you're spreading your risk?
Yeah, we have spread our risk, but we've also taken advantage of the quality Jersey Cross animal that come out of the dairy cows.
Good on you for using jerseys.
It's starting to pick up again. It's getting a bit of momentum again, but you know, they do provide a quality beef animal, and that's not highly recognised. Those that know the animal know that the beef quality that comes out of them and the finishing ability is a really good product.
Do you get a certain amount of marbling with that?
Yes, we are, yes, and AgResearch did some work a number of years ago, and they utilised some of our animals that looked at the marbling effect. So there is a bit of marbling. It's probably not as much as a Wagyu animal, which is specifically bred for that, but it's a really good balanced meat product.
Now the rainfall, it's pretty varied.
Yeah, so generally we range from 650 mils of rain in a low year to 1100, 1200 in a wet year. So there is a range, and being in the north, we tend to get a little bit more subtropical flow. So particularly this year is an example where the weather patterns have brought more subtropical type flows, and our rain falls tend to be large dumps as opposed to spread evenly across the year. So our challenge is actually managing when the rain falls. So wet winters, dry summers generally, and with subtropical dumps.
And there's humidity.
And humidity, yes. There's a fair amount of that with that subtropical airflows, particularly an easterly pattern like we've had for the last 2 months. A lot of humidity, and which brings in itself flies, facial eczema challenges, bugs of various descriptions. So there's a number of challenges.
What sort of pasture do you use up here?
Yes, this is Kaikuyu country, and obviously driving a per hectare performance is what we're looking for. So the Kaikuyu does alter its growing points during the year. It doesn't grow during that early spring period very vigorously, where you're trying to feed a whole lot of newly calved cows. So we use a lot of Italian grasses to fill those holes, but then we use a summer cropping regime and a permanent pasture regime after that to put new varieties of pastures in to fill those gaps.
So what are you using?
Well, we started off using perennial ryegrass, the normal perennial ryegrass makeups of pastures, but we're finding they're not lasting. The Kaikuyu reverts really quickly over the sort of 2 or 3 year period, and they don't cope with those drier points that we get. So we're looking at alternative species, and we've trended to more fescues and cocksfoots. We've used a little bit of lucerne in the last year, doing a bit of work around legumes. So we're trying to find a pasture that's going to be resilient in terms of those dry points and deeper rooting, and can make use of the moisture that's here and add with the Kaikuyu. Yep.
I've sort of quietly smiled really, because you enjoyed the Seed Force range so much you ended up working with them.
That's right, it is ironic. We've been working them ever since they started, and I think this year it's 10 years since they've been in operation, and we've been involved for that 10 years. Initially as a trial farm in terms of putting some trials on. And on the seed basis, we've identified through those trials pastures that have actually grown really well here, and so we've pursued those varieties, and that's really important that we identify varieties that grow well in this environment. So from that basis, they provide a product that actually really does suit what we're looking for and suit what the animal's looking for. And we've also had a relationship through a sponsorship arrangement with Sons Relicar for a number of years, which was very productive for both of us.
Palatability is just so important.
It's really important, and there are a number of varieties on the market that are just marketed through yield. And yield is one thing, but unless the animal that's eating them wants to eat them, and then can turn that into something productive, then you're really wasting your time. So Seed Force, one of their philosophies is that they are actually breeding plant varieties that are that the animal likes to eat and is productive. So that's important to us as well. We get tied up with persistence and having ryegrass species persisting longer, and some of those varieties are inflicted with various ranges of endophytes. Yes, they do protect them from insect damage and make them persistent, but some of the varieties are actually, the cows don't enjoy eating, and we've seen evidence of that, and so we've actually steered away from endophyte variety pastures for that reason, because the animals actually don't like eating them, and that's why they persist.
That's a pretty good sort of an idea. I hadn't thought it persists because they're not being eaten.
Yes, and it persists for two reasons. One is the animal refuses to eat lower than it needs to, and that allows the crown to still survive. But also we've seen evidence of some of the pastures, animals walking around and not wanting to eat it, and they're able to reseed, which allows them to continue to persist and stay in the environment. And that's, I suppose, why the purest wild endophyte is so persistent, in that it's actually not very palatable to an animal. So that's why it stays there. So in terms of plant breeding, I've identified endophytes that both protect from insects but also give that bit of survival.
So finally, Murray, the industry where it is, I guess you're going to have to work smarter rather than harder.
Yeah, we're in a tough period of time at the moment. The world prices are under pressure, and commodity prices are under pressure with oversupply around the world. We need to be really smart in terms of, one, what we do on farm, to reinforce our pasture-based system to ensure that we're actually leveraging the most we can out of what we grow, and that's a little bit what we try to do in terms of the varieties and the species we plant. So we need to come back to the basic fundamentals, go back to our basic fundamentals on how we operate and what made us efficient in the first place. But also in terms of a marketing arm, we need to be smart in terms of capturing all the high value markets we can capture, and also protect our brand and market who we are and what we produce, as opposed to just be commodity traders on the market with everybody else.
I'm Rob Cope-Williams. If you want to catch up on what we've been talking about, don't forget to go to our website. It's ontheland.co.nz, and we're also on Facebook, as you'll find when you go on to that. As I said, I'm Rob Cope-Williams. You've either been watching or you've just missed the program, but I will be back at the same time next week. Until then, bye now.